Willkommen! My name is Sean Huggins. I'm an American living in Germany, and on this channel, I'm looking to learn all about life in Germany and Europe in general through watching silly videos and stuff on the internet with you guys. So, if you enjoy, consider subscribing. We got new videos every single day, and let's just hop straight into it. So, in this video, we're going to be taking a look at why does American beer taste like water? This is something that I hear all the time here in Germany, that American beer is crappy and German beer is better and all that stuff. So let's find out why, shall we? I'm curious.
American lager. Crisp, light, refreshing.
Hams.
It's as American as baseball and apple pie and Snooki and Abraham Lincoln's beard. And here in America, we sure do like our beer. We're ranked second in the world for overall beer consumption, an honor we've earned by tossing back roughly 51 billion pints of suds every single year.
Damn.
And although there are a lot of options to choose from, the style of beer we drink the most by far is the traditional light American lager. Of course, not everyone else in the world loves American beer.
We find your American beer is a little like making love in a canoe. It's f***ing close to water.
Very well-made beers. These are very high-quality beers, but they're kind of light on beer flavor.
This is Ray Daniels, founder of the Cicerone Certification Program in Chicago, longtime brewer and expert beer drinker.
And the main reason is because there's not that much malt in these recipes.
Yeah.
And the Germans have a saying that malt is the soul of beer, and there's not that much malt in these beers.
But how did a style
So the Germans like the malt and Americans do not. Okay,
beer
we're
that's
getting
drinkable and
there
refreshing,
slowly.
yet has no soul, get to be so popular? 5 reasons: German immigrants, Prohibition, brewing technology, World War II, and the post-war consumer packaged goods economy.
Whoa.
But I'm going to get to that in a minute. Excuse me. Could I get a cool, refreshing lager, please?
Here is our beer list, categorized by country. Lagers are listed on the left alphabetically by varietal.
Just Coors. Thanks.
Coors. It's like the most watery beer.
Why is that? I would say, like, for most of American history, this was the kind of beer we were drinking, right?
Well, it really has to
why?
do with brewing technology and the migration of German-speaking immigrants coming to the U.S.
Between 1850...
What? The Germans came to America and sabotaged our beer? Is that what you're telling me? Oh, it all makes sense now.
In 1900, millions of
Sneaky Germans.
German-speaking immigrants migrated to the United States. Prior to that, British-style ales dominated the beer industry.
The sneaky
But the
Germans did it to us.
wanted something different.
Wanted to make a nice, golden, clear, pale beer, because that was the style of beer in Germany at the time. But American barley, the stuff that grows here in the United States, is different than the barley that grows in Europe. And they couldn't make a clear beer with American 6-row barley because it has a higher protein content. The problem, they were very annoyed. They couldn't get clear beer.
I mean, I would be pretty annoyed if I couldn't get beer.
Absolutely. You know, it didn't look pretty the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
So they figured out that if they took a low protein grain, like corn or rice, and mixed it into the recipe, and they'd get a lower protein content in the finished beer, and the beer would turn out clear. So that was the original reason. It was not to make it cheap. It was not, you know, anything else, but they wanted a nice, clear, golden beer.
The German engineers sabotaged us Americans.
The Czech-style Pilsner, which is a type of lager, quickly became the beer of choice. Breweries began popping up all over the place, many of which were owned and operated by German immigrants like Adolf Coors, Frederick Miller, Joseph Schlitz, Frederick Pabst Blue Ribbon, and a soap maker named Eberhard Anheuser. The brewing industry in America flourished.
Dude, so like all of the main beer companies in America were all like German immigrants. Interesting.
And by 1873, the country had over 4,000 breweries. However, this golden age of golden lager would not last long. The boom in the beer industry was accompanied by a boom in other things associated with beer, like public drunkenness and domestic violence. Then something happened in America that set the brewing industry back a few decades.
Prohibition.
When the 18th Amendment passed in 1919, Prohibition in the United States had officially begun. The production, transport, and sale of alcohol became illegal, and the beer industry all but ceased to exist, with the exception of a few industrious entrepreneurs.
When Prohibition was finally repealed in 1933, only a fraction of the beer manufacturers from the late 1800s remained, and that number continued to drop every year. Strict state laws combined with heavy government regulation made it difficult for smaller beer companies to survive, not to mention the fact that home brewing was still illegal. During World War II, grain was rationed in the United States, forcing beer makers to rely more heavily on adjuncts like corn and rice. This slowed the
Okay, so during the war, they had to stretch their resources more, which made them use corn and rice.
The emergence of smaller breweries, but allowed bigger, established breweries to flourish. After the war ended, America didn't need to ration anymore, and we began to adopt a more liberal approach to consumption.
You know, and then the 20th century was pretty much a century of consumer packaged goods in the United States. We had very narrow media outlets. You know, when I was a kid, there were only 3 TV stations. Whoa. Period. I know, ancient history, right?
Yeah.
Everything got narrowed down to a very small number of brands with universal distribution.
So basically, during the war and right after the war, that killed all of the small companies, and only the biggest of the biggest companies were able to even survive going through that time period. And then basically those big companies dominate the entire media, the entire market, and create the monopolies that we have today, basically, in America.
Throughout the country.
Interesting.
It's true for soap, breakfast cereal, coffee was Folgers and Maxwell House. I mean, everything got narrowed down to a very small number of consumer brands, and beer was no different.
Throughout the second half of the 20th century, the number of independent breweries dwindled as beer manufacturers merged and companies like Anheuser-Busch and Miller continued to grow.
Yeah, basically the 2 or 3 big companies just started to buy all the smaller brands, and that's still how it works today.
By 1978, the beer-making industry hit a record low, with only around 80 breweries operating in the U.S.
America's beer got
80 breweries in the entire U.S. That is mind-blowing.
even more watered down when the big beer companies devised a brilliant strategy to sell more beer. Light beer.
Beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
Originally marketed unsuccessfully as a diet drink, light beers promised the same great taste, but with less filling, which basically just encouraged people to drink more. Miller Lite and Bud Light's advertising campaigns were hugely successful, and further cemented their dominance of the beer industry.
Unless you were one of the millions of Americans who enjoyed bland, watery beer, things were looking pretty bleak. But then a miracle happened. In 1977, Congress passed a small brewer tax credit, and in 1978, a bill was signed into law that finally made home brewing legal throughout the country.
Jimmy Carter, signed home brewing, one of the other great things Jimmy Carter did.
Wow, what a great man.
Yeah, absolutely. Home brewing became legal, and home brewing really drove the craft brewing movement. It was really tough in the early days because there was no equipment. Nobody was selling supplies to these small breweries. You know, a small brewer might need 1,000 pounds of malt. And they call up a malt supplier, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll send you some malt. You know, how many train car loads do you need?" It's like, well, how much is a train car? 30,000 pounds. Like,
whoa!
Can I get 1,000?
Yeah.
You know, click.
It started slow at first, but over the years, the number of small craft breweries began to steadily increase.
So what we're seeing now, what most people think of as the craft movement, the modern one, and the second wave really started at about 2003. There were craft brewers out there who'd been sort of sticking to their knitting and really, you know, cleaning up their game and getting things good. New breweries started being founded, and we've had this huge, you know, upsurge of breweries. So
yeah, there are a ton of breweries in America now. They're still mostly small breweries, but like basically every town has its own brewery, if not 2 or 3. It's so common in America now to have local little breweries. But the local breweries in Germany are a lot bigger on average. Like, let's say every decently sized town in Germany has their own pretty large brewery that distributes throughout a large area around that city or around that town. In America, it's more like basically a restaurant or a bar that brews their own beer, and you have to go to that place. They really don't distribute to like the local grocery stores or local other stores like they do in Germany. So it's probably a lot harder for them to get big in America, but there are still a ton of breweries nowadays in America, which is pretty cool.
That's 30 years of craft beer history in a nutshell.
No longer limited to the light lagers that Americans had been drinking for over a century, brewers can now experiment with a variety of styles and flavors, creating new recipes and borrowing from old traditions as well. In 2015, the number of breweries in America reached an all-time high at 4,269, surpassing pre-Prohibition numbers.
Wow.
Of course, at the same time, after years of mergers and acquisitions, the world's 5 biggest beer companies now control over 50% of the world's beer market.
5 companies control over 50% of the world's beer market. Oh my gosh. That's just crazy to me that that's even allowed.
Although big beer continues to dominate, it does not seem to be slowing down craft beer, and we have more options for beer consumption than ever before.
Definitely.
This is truly a good time to have a beer, if you're of age and you drink responsibly. Stay in school.
So what do you think? Do you enjoy craft brews? Do you think we're in a beer bubble that will explode at any time? Or are you content to stick with the good old mass-produced American light lager? I kind of just like it all. Let us know in the comments.
Wow, okay, interesting. So basically, American beer sucks because of like World War II and Prohibition and the frickin' sneaky Germans coming. No, I'm just kidding. Basically, American beer sucks because of shortages of resources during World War II, and then after World War II, there was just no way for smaller breweries to stay alive because of Prohibition, and it led to the monopoly that we have today. I mean, I guess that makes sense, but it's good to see that we have a lot more breweries nowadays, like I said. So you're still able to get very good beer in America. It's just not as widely distributed like it is in Germany, unfortunately. At least not yet, but maybe in the future it will be. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think as Germans. Have you tried the traditional American beer, the water beer? And if so, what did you think? And a bonus question, if you've ever had a chance to try any of these craft beers from America in these small American breweries, how do you think that they compare to the German beer? I'd love to know what you guys think about that. But that's all the time that I have for today. Be sure to check my other socials linked in the description, including my vlog channel. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. We got new videos every single day. Thank you guys so much for being here, and as always, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.